By the way, it's been 164 days.
Americans held hostage, abandoned behind enemy lines. Day 164.
In Joe Biden's world of sunshine, cotton candy, lollipops, rainbows, chocolate ice cream, there's nothing to worry about. Not Afghanistan, not a 40-year high of inflation, no supply chain crisis, no worker shortage, no border crisis, no COVID crisis. Think about it. There are now ongoing catastrophes at home and abroad. Europe is on the cusp of war. Joe Biden is in a clothing boutique looking at a lady's blouse. Anyway, with no other events on his schedule, none. Tonight I have a message. Whoever's really running the show at the White House, we, the American people, are not stupid. Now, it is now painfully obvious to everyone, Joe is not fit to serve. U.S. presidents don't just hang out at ice cream parlors and then call it a day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That is not normal. And of course, by all accounts, Joe has never been, well, to be blunt, the sharpest tool in the shed anyway. Remember, he plagiarized speeches, cheated in law school, still finished near the bottom of his class, lied about that too. High-level officials in the Obama administration, they even openly mocked Joe for getting pretty much everything wrong. But now it's serious and much worse. As a reminder, here is Joe Biden throughout the years. Take a look.
In our bilateral relationships with nations with whom we deal and have serious trade deficits, we have to be willing to put more cards on the table.
And in that neighborhood, there was filled with women and men, mothers and fathers who taught their children if they believed in themselves, if they were honest, if they worked hard, if they loved their country, they could accomplish anything. We believed it and we did.
Now they got a new plan. Trust me, it's not going to cost you any more. Folks, follow your instincts on this one.
They put one foot in front of the other. They keep going. That's the unbreakable spirit of the people of America.
I would say that was a pretty cognitively aware, sharp, combative Joe Biden. Now let's take a moment and compare what you just heard to Biden's recent press conference from just last week. See if you notice a discernible difference. You decide. Take a look.
The idea that with the nature not when the political coverage that look some of the political players and some of the let me ask a rhetorical question. No, I won't. Anyway.
Ask yourself, how does that make you feel? For me, I'm embarrassed and I find it humiliating for our country. Here's an obvious question that no one in the media mob will dare ask. Does Joe Biden have the mental strength and capacity to serve as the President of the United States? Now, we're going to ask two doctors this very question. Now, I'm not a medical professional, but it appears to me to be very transparent, very obvious, very clear, and so many others, that Joe Biden is in a steep cognitive decline. It seems to be accelerating to me. We know that he required not one, but two potentially degenerative brain surgeries from aneurysms during his time in the U.S. Senate. And we can all see that Biden now struggles to find words. These long, awkward pauses of his, often confusing names and places and dates. He has these, bouts of sudden anger are very real. Over the past few days, Joe called not one but two Fox News reporters stupid, even one a son of a bitch, even accused another reporter of not knowing how to read. Today, Jen Psaki did her very best to try and clean up that mess without apologizing, of course. Why would they say they're sorry? Not that I care, but take a look.
Forgive me, it's sort of the elephant in the room. Many people in the country were talking about it last night, this morning. Does the president regret saying what he said about Peter? Can you shed some light if you have had any conversations with him today about what happened last night?
Well, I would say what's most important, and it's Peter sitting here, so this is kind of a funny thing, but the president, called Peter, and he confirmed this, so this is only why I'm speaking to this. And if you have private conversations with the president, I will assure you I'm not going to convey that on your behalf. But Peter spoke to this. The president called him. He conveyed to him that it was nothing personal, man, and also acknowledged that all of you are going to ask him a range of questions. So I think that speaks for itself.
No hard feelings, pal. By the way, unlike fake news CNN and every liberal in the country, we're not going to fake and feign immoral outrage. I don't really give a rip what Joe Biden says to anybody. It's not personal? Fine, I'll take it that way. Joe is apparently unable to control his bursts of anger and so many other cognitive troubles. All right, so last night we did this on the program, and our friend Geraldo Rivera does not believe Joe Biden is mentally unfit. He doesn't think that the president is in a steep cognitive decline. Before we get to Geraldo, I want to play a clip. Unlike Joe Biden, Geraldo, sorry to do this to you, over the years, we went back and we did the same thing with you. You have not changed at all. Take a look.
Right, this is the Big Bagram Air Base, our main base in Afghanistan, and this is the Falcon DFAC. DFAC, that's dining facility to those of you who don't speak military jargon.
He's a political pundit, a martial arts champion, of course, a best-selling author, most recently of Black Belt Patriotism, How to Reawaken America. He is Chuck Norris.
It was the trial of the 20th century, the longest in the history of California, 10 months. 150 witnesses called to the courthouse here in downtown Los Angeles. This is where they are seeing an enormous influx of migrant families coming without documentation.
Major dangerous stoners. They hired by Geraldo Rivera. Welcome to Cops All Access. The revival season is rolling out exclusively right here on Fox Nation.
Exact same guy 20 years later. So I have another question. After seeing this, does our friend, and he is our friend, Geraldo Rivera, now believe Joe Biden has lost more than just a step? And with so much at stake, it's the most important job, hardest job in the world. Don't the American people deserve to see the results of a cognitive test like Donald Trump took so that we can know that this president is okay? Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else. Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson's Tonight. A little news alert for you. Nancy Pelosi is even more agitated tonight than usual. On a conference call just hours ago, Pelosi demanded that her members vote immediately on a piece of legislation she says is critical to our national security. The bill she's talking about, among other things, affirms the central importance of national borders. Well, of course it does. Without a border, you can't have a country. And Nancy Pelosi firmly believes that. In fact, she believes it so strongly, she's directing the Biden administration to develop an urgent new plan to keep the border secure. In fact, not simply secure, but in the words of the new legislation, Section 208, inviolable, meaning impossible to breach, walled up and buttoned down, bulletproof. That's quite a border. But why wouldn't it be? When it comes to borders, Nancy Pelosi isn't messing around. Are you surprised to hear this? Well, you may have misunderstood. Pelosi isn't talking about the U.S. border, the one that's currently open. She's talking about the Ukrainian border, the one that actually matters. The bill Pelosi is promoting is called the Defending Ukraine Sovereignty Act. Its purpose is to guarantee, quote, Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. These are the things that all countries need. We'd love to have them here. But no, we're going to have to wait. Ukraine is ahead of us in the queue for secure borders. And honestly, you can see why. As they used to say when we were kids growing up in the United States, what's good for the lightly populated Russian colony of Ukraine is good for us. As our oldest and most cherished ally, yoked tightly to the American people by the ancient bonds of friendship, shared culture, and Burisma, Ukraine comes first. It has to come first. When caravans of undocumented Russians appear on the Ukrainian border, the United States doesn't sit idly by. The United States swoops in with deadly weapons to push these people back. We'll send missiles to Ukraine if we have to. In fact, we already have billions of dollars worth. But wait a second, you ask. Isn't undocumented immigration a good thing? Doesn't immigration increase diversity, the blessed source of all beauty, power, and strength? Well, sure. Most of the time it does, but not in Ukraine. Ukraine exists for the exclusive presence of Ukrainians. People who look or speak differently, people from other places with, say, different religions, are not allowed in Ukraine. Period. That's Nancy Pelosi's position. Ukraine is the one place Nancy Pelosi very much wants to keep racially pure. She's willing to use lethal force to do that. Virtually everyone in Congress agrees with Pelosi, so does the White House. Here's Joe Biden's Deputy National Security Advisor explaining that when undocumented foreign nationals arrive in Ukraine, they'll be killed.
Why should Americans care about what's happening in Ukraine?
Because it goes to a very fundamental principle of all nations, which is that our borders should be inviolate, that our sovereignty should be respected.
Our borders should be inviolate. Our sovereignty should be respected, meaning Ukraine's. That man was Jonathan Feiner. He's Biden's Deputy National Security Advisor. It's interesting to note that Jonathan Feiner has no relevant experience for the job he currently holds. At one point, he was a Washington Post reporter. That's reassuring. Most recently, he was cashing in at a private equity firm paying approximately half the federal tax rate you are. Good for him. But one thing Jonathan Feiner has learned along the way is that Ukrainian borders matter. If you cross without permission, you will be droned into the next life. Kamala Harris strongly agrees with that. Here's Harris threatening would-be Russian immigrants.
The bottom line is that we have been clear and consistent for quite some time that we respect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, and we expect that Russia would do the same, and any aggressive action taken by Vladimir Putin will be met with severe consequences.
Severe consequences? The understatement is chilly. That woman is bloodthirsty, as her borders are. Try to cross the border and we'll take out your entire caravan. Claim asylum? What's asylum? Don't think so. One toe over the line and you're dead. Those are strong words, but Kamala Harris appears to mean them. She probably does mean them. But again, you should know that Kamala Harris is not talking about our border here in the U.S. She's talking about the Ukrainian border. Now, what's the difference between the two? Well, the Ukrainian border, by contrast, is a place the Pentagon is willing to defend. Watch.
8,500 U.S. military personnel on heightened alert. Is this the ceiling of military personnel that the administration will be committing to this conflict, do you see?
Well, it's what we're talking about today is about 8,500 on heightened alert. But as I said yesterday, we're certainly not going to rule out other options. Our job is to provide options to the president, to the commander-in-chief, and we're going to continue to do that. And so I certainly would not rule out the possibility that we could be putting additional forces on heightened alert in the coming days and weeks, and maybe even moving troops around Europe that are already there to bolster and to reassure some of our allies on the ground on the continent.
Wait, we're only sending 8,500 American troops to protect the Ukrainian border? Asked the teleprompter. Well, says John Kirby, actually, we could send a lot more. They're all poised to secure the sacred Ukrainian border. So you may be wondering, how does that commitment compare to what the Pentagon is willing to deploy to our southern border? Well, let's see a little back-of-the-envelope math here. It's exactly 8,500 more. Because there are no troops, no American troops heading to our southern border. That may seem distressing to you, but in a way it makes sense. Ukraine needs the troops. Ukraine hasn't been invaded yet. We have been invaded, and we lost. We've been defeated. And like all vanquished nations, we're being treated with humiliating contempt by world leaders, in this case by our own leaders. Customs and Border Protection just released the latest statistics on the invasion ongoing into this country. In the month of December, last month, the feds encountered close to 180,000 illegal immigrants, foreign nationals, whose identities we can't know, on the southwest border. Here, all living here now. How many people is that? Well, for perspective, that's more than the 3 previous Decembers combined. In the last calendar year, more than 2 million foreign nationals swept across the Mexican border, unimpeded, into this country, and now live here. That's a lot of people, many times the population of Boston, Atlanta, Denver, pick a city, in 1 year. But you know what's more than? It's a lot more than the Russian army has massed on the Ukrainian border, something we're all hysterical about. And of course, it's not just people coming illegally into this country, it's the drugs they are bringing. Record amounts of narcotics. Narcotics that are driving the single most deadly drug epidemic in the history of this country. You probably know someone who's had a loved one die
Not just habitual drug users, but people using drugs recreationally that are mixed with fentanyl, and they're dead. Thousands and thousands, more than 100,000 in 1 year. Who's doing this? The cartels. They're killing far more Americans than Vladimir Putin ever could, and they're doing it with the help of the Biden administration. But in the meantime, we've got 2 million, more than, new people living in this country. Who are they? Well, we can't say for sure. No one really knows who they are. That's part of the problem. In an age when the rest of us are followed and surveilled, and show your medical papers. Here's some facial recognition software. We're letting in too many people. We can't prove who they are. We have no way of doing that. Don't let them lie to you. We do know they're coming from all over the world. Fox's Bill Melugin has been virtually the only person in American media to keep track of what is happening here. Here's part of what he found.
Video from a law enforcement source shows a single massive group of about 400 migrants who crossed illegally into Eagle Pass, Texas on Wednesday night. Border Patrol photos show the size of that group, with the sector chief himself saying this was no coincidence. It was orchestrated by criminal elements for money. The night before, the exact same thing happened. Photos from Border Patrol show another group of 400 after they crossed illegally into Eagle Pass Tuesday night. Here in the Rio Grande Valley, we embedded with Texas DPS as they track down runners in the brush looking to evade near La Joya, Texas. 2 men in this group were from China.
That was Bill Melugin on the border. He's still there. We'll go back to him in just a moment. But this is an ongoing assault on our national sovereignty, on our territorial integrity. The things we've been hearing for the last month are so vitally important in Ukraine. How's this happen? Who's the Vladimir Putin in this morality tale? Well, that would be Joe Biden. This has all been allowed, enabled, encouraged by Joe Biden with the help of big corporations and left-wing nonprofits. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who really should be charged with a crime but hasn't been yet, recently bragged to CBS News that, we're quoting, "We have fundamentally changed immigration enforcement in the interior." And we're continuing the quote, "For the first time ever, our policy explicitly states that a non-citizen's unlawful presence in the United States will not by itself be a basis for the initiation of an enforcement action." So what does that mean exactly? So this is the guy charged with enforcing immigration laws that he did not create. He's in the executive branch. They don't create laws. But here's the guy in charge of enforcing them, bragging that he's decided to ignore federal law. These were the laws that our Congress was elected to pass. Oh, thwarting democracy, anyone? Pay no attention. Vladimir Putin's the one who threatens democracy. Everything's fine in this country. We're doing what you elected us to do. They're not even trying. Facebook's not a threat to democracy. How could it be? Mark Zuckerberg funds the Democratic Party. He's a good guy. But Facebook is encouraging this invasion too. Facebook helps its users share information on how to cross the border illegally, on how to break our laws. Do they encourage users to cook meth? Here's how you make fentanyl. Here's how child trafficking can make you millions. Those are crimes too. We can't say that they're doing that. They're encouraging the breaking of federal immigration law. We're not guessing about this. Facebook admitted it recently to the Attorney General of the state of Arizona. We're quoting, "We do allow people to share information about how to enter a country illegally or request information about how to be smuggled." About how to be smuggled? Facebook is helping people who, quote, want to be smuggled? In addition to being totally evil, these people have no self-awareness. Imagine saying something like that. Uber does it too. Uber drivers are picking up illegal migrants from the border. We know because Fox News spoke to one driver in Arizona who said, quote, "I just will get a notification of a pickup, head down to the location, there will be a group of 20-plus immigrants standing on the corner waiting for Ubers." So again, if Facebook and Uber were abetting child trafficking, which on some level they are, because child trafficking is an integral part of illegal immigration, so is drug trafficking, maybe someone would wake up and do something about it. You're seeing people rotting in solitary because they trespassed in the Capitol, but Uber and Facebook are helping people violate federal law and we don't care? No one in Congress is investigating any of this. Sounds like sedition to us. But they're busy. They're sending hundreds of millions of dollars of lethal weapons to Ukraine to help with their border. Pentagon's not sending troops to our border, they're sending them to Ukraine's border. So that's the Biden administration's approach. That approach is virtually uncontested in Washington. Here's Mitch McConnell, who poses by day as leader of the opposition in the Senate.
What I've been hearing since then is encouraging, that they're prepared to take steps before and encouraging, not afterwards. I've not been near the news this morning, so I'm not sure what additionally may have occurred, but it appears to me the administration is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it appears that way. If the direction you want to move is to completely change the population of the country for political reasons, there's 2 million people in 1 year, people whose identities you can't confirm, whose intentions you don't know, who are bringing with them records amounts of narcotics and have killed over 100,000 Americans. If that's the goal, then Mr. McConnell, you're on to something. You're moving in the right direction. But if the goal is to have a first world country where laws mean something, probably not the right direction. So why are you telling us otherwise, Mr. McConnell? Who are you working for exactly? Whose side are you on? I think we know. Who's paying for all this stuff? Well, you are. American citizens are paying for it. The United Nations, which takes billions in U.S. tax dollars, is paying for it too. They're giving out cash to illegal migrants heading to our border. An investigation by the Center for Immigration Studies found the UN has been handing out cash debit cards to U.S.-bound illegal aliens and giving them advice on how to claim asylum in our country, on how to game our system, on how to make a mockery of our laws. They don't respect us. We don't respect ourselves enough to stop this. Once these migrants get here, our authorities do everything possible to make sure they stay. The Biden administration attempted on day one to pause all deportations. That moratorium, thank God, was blocked by the federal judge by the party. The administration is continuing to abet criminal behavior. They're allowing illegals to use their arrest warrants as ID in airports. You try that. Sorry, don't have my ID, but I do have my arrest warrant. Can I get housing subsidies, food stamps, free health care, and a flight? Sure you can. You're from another country. Americans don't get that. Here's another report from Bill Melugin.
TSA confirms to Fox News that the agency is allowing illegal immigrants to use arrest warrants as ID at security checkpoints in airports, telling us in part, quote, for non-citizens and non-U.S. nationals who do not otherwise have acceptable forms of ID for presentation at security checkpoints, TSA may also accept certain DHS-issued forms, including ICE Form I-200, warrant for arrest of an alien.
You just can't repeat this enough, and again, we're doing this not because we think it's going to change anything. It won't. This is just a TV show, but we want a record of what's happening right now. History is rewritten, unfortunately, by the victors, and the details disappear. But we think the details are important. We think we all should be allowed to know why this is happening and how it's happening. So just to restate, we're allowing foreigners who came here illegally in violation of our laws, which are unenforced by our current government, which is undermining democracy by its refusal to enforce those laws. Those people get to use their arrest warrants to get on airplanes while you have to show ID. Meanwhile, again, you can't say this enough, we'll stop after this, Congress is doing everything it can, pulling out all the stops to send more money to Eastern Europe to protect the borders of Ukraine. It's like it's not even real, but it is real.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
The Lion program is a master's for people who haven't studied computer science at the undergraduate level.
Most of you women watching have been on a blind date. You know what it's like. Your friends get you all excited about this mystery guy. They talk him up. Tell you he's smart, funny, handsome, and interesting. You have second thoughts, but your buddies insist you're perfect for each other. And then you show up. And instead of sitting down for dinner with John Stamos, you realize you're eating with Michael Moore. He's a mess. He's rude. He lies. And then he tells you he forgot his wallet. You're mad at your friends for setting this up, and somewhere in between your salad and your steak, you realize you've made a terrible mistake. Now, that's essentially what happened to America with Joe Biden. The media has spent the last few years serving as Biden's hype man, promising us he's a moderate, that he's a great unifier who will bring the country back together, competent and calm. And they insisted we were the perfect match because Joe was blue-collar Biden. America always loves a working-class hero, so the media turned Joe into one, and he capitalized on that. Biden sold himself to us as a son of Scranton, Pennsylvania.
I'm very proud of being from Scranton. I see it from where I grew up in a town like this, from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Fact is, the president can only see the world from Park Avenue. I see it from Scranton. Scranton, 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 Scranton.
It's true, Biden was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania in 1942. But the family didn't stick around the Electric City for too long. By the time Joe was 10, the family had bailed on Pennsylvania to go find a better life in Delaware. According to the Washington Post, in the 1950s, Scranton was at the start of a long, slow decline. The coal mines that had fueled the city's early prosperity were shutting down. Textile factories, too, were on their way out, and thousands of people picked up and left for better opportunities elsewhere. Thousands of people left like the Bidens. They left to find greener pastures, and Scranton has been struggling ever since. According to the U.S. Census, 23% of Scranton's population lives in poverty, compared to just 15% back in 2000. Doesn't look like Joe's done a lot to help his so-called hometown, as senator, as vice president, or as president. So what do the people of Scranton think of Biden? Well, we sent some producers there to find out.
The president, Joe Biden, he's from Scranton, it's his hometown.
Whoa!
What do you think that the president has done for Scranton?
Nothing that I know of.
Not only has he done nothing for Scranton, he's done nothing for the rest of the United States.
For the town, for the city of Scranton, he's done a lot. You know what I mean? Just I can't put it into words right now.
And I've seen that they changed the highway to his name, so I guess they're making small changes.
Why would you name a street after him?
Do you realize what you've done?
So when Joe Biden says, on the campaign trail that he's going to hold true to those Scranton roots, do you think he's done that as president?
No, absolutely not. Joe Biden does not speak for me. He's a typical career politician. Joe Biden, to me, is like a puppet.
I'm not a puppet. I'm real.
What concerns do you have that you feel like are not getting addressed?
Inflation, the supply chain issue, gas prices.
Are you getting hurt by inflation?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, everybody is, for sure. Do you think Joe Biden is shutting down the virus?
How? No. No way.
Oh, no, it's still here. If you could tell Joe Biden something, what would that something be?
Joe Biden, stop handing out checks.
A year's salary, right here. What I call them? Fun coupon.
Retire and get out of office.
Go home. Go home.
What in the hell are you doing?
You don't want to know what I want to say.
We didn't find a lot of Biden fans, but can you blame them? The man uses the city as a bumper sticker to get street cred from working class people. But in reality, the blue-collar Biden was never that blue-collar. According to author Ben Schreckinger's book, The Bidens, Joe's family has quite a unique financial history. It seems they've spent their whole lives chasing inside deals, many of which were set up by other family members. Biden's father's finances seesawed back and forth when Joe was younger, until he got rich quick. So, where'd that money come from? He reportedly hunted pheasants, drove convertibles, and partied on yachts. That doesn't sound very blue-collar to me, but how did he afford all of this if he was working class? It was Joe's uncle, Bill Sheen, who made a fortune in World War II, selling armor to the shipping industry. But when the war ended, how did Biden's father stay on top? Well, he didn't. And that's another story for another day. The Biden family balance sheet has always been full of questionable details, but the media doesn't care to look into it because it destroys their narrative. Biden's just a product they sold to beat Trump. And now that product, Joe Biden, is defective, and they're starting to pull him from the shelves. You remember, they told us Biden was calm, cool, and collected, and a wise man with a steady hand. But he's shown us that he's anything but. Listen to how he talks about his son Hunter compared to an actual professional.
He is the smartest man I know. I mean, in terms of pure intellectual capacity.
Do you think inflation is a political liability ahead of the midterms?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch.
Calm down, Joe. No need to get angry. Hunter's the smartest man you know, but Peter Ducey's a stupid son of a bitch. We get it. But this is who Biden really is. A cornered grump with a suspect resume. Maybe Dr. Jill can give us some insight into why he's so cranky. Maybe it's Manchin and Sinema driving him nuts. Or maybe he just can't handle Kamala's constant drama. We can't either. Either way, Biden's losing his temper far more often than normal.
Ask the right question.
You're a damn liar, man. That's not true.
Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. Go back and read what I said. That is an interesting reading of English.
As the media bends over backwards trying to cover for Biden, he's snapping at him. I guess the old saying is true for the left-wing media. Sometimes it's the ones you love who hurt you the most. But Joe is clearly frustrated, and you would be too if you'd lost total control of your presidency. Remember back in March when he said this about Putin?
We had a long talk, he and I. I know him relatively well. And the conversation started off, I said, I know you and you know me.
Well, flash forward to just last week.
I'm not so sure he is certain what he's going to do. My guess is he will move in. He has to do something.
Biden doesn't understand Putin. He has no idea what's going on. So this is a lesson. Whatever the corporate media tells you, it's probably just a sales pitch for a product they're making money from on the back end. I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? China, Pfizer, Facebook, Ukraine, open borders. You follow the money and work back from there. We're putting it together. Turns out, we're smarter than they think.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Violence against police officers getting even deadlier. The NYPD paying tribute this afternoon after a second officer has died, just days after a suspect shot him and his partner while both were responding to a domestic dispute. That comes as a Black Lives Matter chapter from Washington, D.C. faces backlash from police groups after complaining of propaganda and saying officers who get shot should not be called heroes. The group tweeting this. Look at the reaction and coverage tonight. Tearjerker press conferences and proclamations of heroes coming soon. Being black in D.C. is more dangerous than any job. First, let us all express our condolences to Officer Mora and his family. We're hoping that he would make it. Unfortunately, that was not the case. So, Judge, we woke up this morning, found out that the Black Lives Matter chapter in D.C. had tweeted that. I would imagine that your head exploded.
Yeah, it's been exploding a lot in the last month. There's been a police officer shot every day in this country since the beginning of the year. And we've had 4 cops shot in New York City in the past week. Most of them are victims of just ambushes. And the bottom line is this. You've got all of these politicians who now come out and say, you know, we stand with the police and all this nonsense. They don't stand with the police because they were in favor of defunding, they were in favor of eliminating bail, releasing criminals and lowering criminal charges. And then all of a sudden, because the winds kind of blow in favor of a police officer, they want to be, you know, out there with the group. Well, you know what? They got to put their money where their mouth is. And the bottom line in this country is, until we start respecting cops, until we tell our children to respect cops, nothing is going to change. Because these politicians aren't going to change. They are activists, social justice warriors. I never knew what that meant. Now I know what it means. You know, they talk about white privilege. This is criminal privilege. Criminals have all the privilege. And you've got Black Lives Matter, the organization, not the movement. I want to be really clear. If they care about what their title alleges,
then they would want to be in the inner cities where most of the victims of crime are African Americans and brown children. That's why you got a coalition saying, I'm going to start bringing in street crime units again. I'm going to start focusing on where these kids are. If you really care about black children, then get involved in mentoring. Put some kind of after-school program in. Give them an internship. Make believe you care for the black lives that are being lost. These are just money hucksters who are doing nothing but promoting division in this country.
Over to you, Greg.
Well done. Well said. Yeah. It's not that surprising because you have to understand there is an underlying streak in BLM that is anti-cop. It is there. They happen to sucker the media into thinking it was something else. And so the media treated them with an exalted reverence. Even as police were getting shot, you actually couldn't say anything. If you said Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter, somehow that was an attack on BLM and you were racist. The media embraced a narrative that contributed to a nationwide Ferguson effect, right? Devaluing of police and ultimately a crime wave in the crumbling of cities run by liberals. So where do you think the smash and grabs, the random murders, the carjackings, the gang violence comes from? It was an acceptance of an idea that America was hopelessly corrupt and therefore looting and arson were seen as justified. That opened the doors to progressive nightmares like no cash bail, early release of violent felons, defunding of police, early retirement of cops. All of this came from the same mentality, and it is a underlying anti-police streak that has been a part of activism for decades.
Geraldo, you were expressing some
I
feelings
was
about this
deeply
earlier.
touched by the judge's recitation just then. It was slammed. It was a slam in my heart when Jason Rivera, the first cop, the 22-year-old, was dead on the scene, and Moore was clinging to life. It just, you could weep. It was so horrible, and just to continue this whole idea of how cops had been pilloried, the riots, the George Floyd riots, where they were Molotov cocktails and assaulted and every crap you could think of thrown at them, and still they held the thin blue line separating civilization from anarchy. But I tell you, that thing about propaganda in D.C. from that BLM chapter.
Started looting it and buying luxury spreads in California and the Caribbean. And then we get all these statements from these, sounds like communist revolutionaries, and they say, oh, no, that was just a chapter that was unaffiliated with the national organization. That happened 10 times. You start thinking oh my God, this isn't what they said it was. And I always look at these movements for their results. Where are the results? You didn't get police reform. You got a lot of property damage. You defunded the police, and it cost a lot of black lives. And now the brand has sunk to below 50% approval. And now everyone's thinking, oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves involved in?
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News.
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son.
Naughty language. President Biden lashing out at Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy for asking a question about inflation.
I love the way Shipkiss describes it. Joe Concha here. Now, Joe, isn't it so great to see this civility that Joe Biden promised?
Yeah, Pyro, Joe Biden is not the commander-in-chief. It appears that he's the curmudgeon-in-chief, and he's increasingly angry with the press. I mean, this is just the last week alone. What a stupid son of a bitch. He said that yesterday. He just played it. What a stupid question. That's what he said about Jackie Heinrich, a White House correspondent also for Fox. And he said to Phil Wegman of Real Clear Politics, if you don't understand that, you're in the wrong business. So, look, the 46th president is understandably upset, right? He is Build Back Better bill, trillions of social spending. That's dead in its current form. His party's attempt to overhaul election law via federal takeover was also thwarted in both cases by members of his own party, right? Inflation's at a 40-year high. Crime is spiraling out of control. Russia's thumbing its nose at us while preparing to invade Ukraine without any fear of reprisal. So, look, This is from an NBC News poll. It's very important. Just 5% of adults say Mr. Biden has performed better than expected as president. And that's one of the many that's one of the lowest we've seen. He's also not seen as likable anymore. He was at 53% when he came into office as far as likability. He's now at 38%. But kudos to Peter Doocy for laughing it off. He told Sean Hannity last night there are much bigger things to focus on. He didn't make himself the story. Obviously, the Russian invasion of Ukraine should be top of mind, or inflation. So Peter Doocy handled that perfectly. I think I saw Stephen Miller on Twitter put it best. He said Jim Acosta would need a neck brace if he actually was addressed to in that way for making himself the victim of the story.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that was just perfect.
Joe, I mean, when the president first entered office, all the questions were about his favorite ice cream flavor or what he would do better than former President Trump. The media has turned on him in recent weeks. Take a listen to this.
Okay.
Who feels like we are in a better place now than we were a year ago? Show of hands. No one believes we're in a better spot now.
Mr. Biden does need a reset because he's lost his identity a bit. He's no longer seen as competent and effective.
Yeah, and also Chuck Todd pointed out that of all the areas public perception has changed regarding President Biden, the fact that people don't see him as easygoing and likable is the most damaging, which sort of brings us back to the SOB comment that he made to Peter Doocy as well.
Precisely. And I'm not so sure it's media turning on him, but they're simply reporting what people are telling them. So when Margaret Brennan does that focus group you saw on CBS, or Chuck Todd is simply reporting poll results from an NBC News poll, that's just like giving scores to the football games, right? And right now, Joe Biden is down many, many touchdowns on all those important issues that we talked about. But from a personality standpoint, that was always kind of Biden's backstop, right? That, well, you know, he's the guy from Scranton, he's folksy, and he makes gaffes, but, you know, that's Joe Biden just being human. But now he just comes across as, and I hate to use this analogy, but it's the only thing that comes to mind, an angry old man who simply cannot take a fair question without lashing out. And for people to say, well, it's different with Biden when Trump did the same exact thing, that is the biggest punchline probably in social media right now.
Right, yeah. It was quite the moment on TV yesterday. Joe, thank you for sharing your perspective on it this morning. We appreciate it.
Of course. Great to see you guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Okay.
Hi, Glenn and Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page.
Confiscation list from last year will leave you without means to fight a bear. That did not rhyme. Yes, your airport delays. Make sure the machete stays. TSA released a list of items they took from travelers in 2021, including a chainsaw, fireworks, machete, and a burrito filled with meth. Finally, a burrito that helps you lose weight. Now, I get why those things had to go, but some other stuff on the list, like a wine holder shaped like a gun and a container of bear spray, made less sense. Funny story, I once mixed up my gun and my wine holder. That's why I'm putting my sommelier's kid through college. R.I.P. sommelier. The officers who took the bear spray are really lucky, however, that there was no grizzly attack on the plane, or else they'd feel exceptionally bad. Bear spray is like a plunger. Don't be without one when you need one. Anyway, airports don't seem to be getting any less crazy in 2022. Just check out what this guy tried to board a plane with over the weekend.
Mr. DeVito, I really can't let you board this time.
Oh, come on. The TSA just worked me over for 40 minutes. I'll tell you the same thing I told them. This underwear is prescription, and I'm cleared to fly.
Well, let me show you the items that were taken at security. A rotary telephone? An actual gun? A toaster? And whatever the hell this thing is.
None of these things were found inside of my luggage.
Mr. DeVito, these items were taken during your cavity search.
Oh.
There you go. You didn't think we were going to make a joke like that. Is there any policy, Loftus? What is the policy? Do you go to jail if they pick? I don't know.
Not if you're Aaron Sorkin.
Why?
You can go through with cocaine and mushrooms and all kinds of loaded weapons, and Burbanks just says, "You get out of here and go right in
Is
that."
that true?
Oh, you don't remember that?
I don't, but then again, I don't remember a lot of things.
But this is the TSA just justified their existence to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems like they miss everything, and now at least we got entertained. A crystal meth burrito? Come on!
I know.
That's the best.
I
You gotta
know.
franchise that.
That's a great idea, hiding stuff, Kat. You still don't. The
No,
TSA,
because
no.
You fell for propaganda. 'Cause this list of the top things they found is probably really a list of the only things they found.
That's true.
Yes, that's true.
Like there's been so many studies, and it's like, oh, they missed 80%, they missed 95%, they missed 95% again, but we're still paying them hundreds of millions, like just all this money for
It's
what?
time. It's
They
time.
gotta go. That's what I'm saying.
We can figure this out on ourselves, right, Tyrus? Or what?
You know, I think sometimes we